Hello, everyone. A lot of familiar faces around here. But thank you for coming. For those that don't know us, as Lorena mentioned, I'm Nico, co-founder and CEO of Velocity Labs. Velocity Labs is set up to be an ecosystem enabler and venture studio for the Polkadot ecosystem. And we have the goal of making Polkadot the best platform to build DeFi applications. So the topic for today is, I would say, a very touchy one and contentious one. We're going to talk about how we open the floodgates of liquidity into the Polkadot ecosystem. That's kind of been one of the biggest pain points since we launched, and I think there's a lot of big catalysts coming for us, as well as things that we can learn, both from the history of Polkadot and the history of the space more broadly. So the agenda for today is current state of affairs. I'm going to throw some data points, most of them unfortunately not as good as we'd hope them to be, but just to kind of understand where we're at right now when it comes to liquidity in the ecosystem. Then secondly is, how did we get here? It's easy to just kind of get stuck in a static image of where we are, but there's been obviously a history of events that have happened before we got here. Third is, what can we learn from our peers? I think that's one of the bad things about Polkadot, that we are such a big ecosystem that we can afford ourselves to be a little bit insular. And I think we can learn a lot about other ecosystems, what they've done, what mistakes they've done, so we don't do them again. And then fourth is, what is Velocity, and maybe I forgot to add there, but what is Polkadot more broadly, and also Velocity doing to address these issues? So let's start with the current state of affairs. So currently, we have 49 parachains live on Polkadot right now. It's about double that if we count Kusama, but let's focus on Polkadot. We have a market cap of 8 billion, which is a significant market cap compared to other L2s out there. I think we rank around 15 to 13 in terms of market cap ranking. We have a aggregated TVL of 125 million. And that's honestly very small when you can compare it to the market cap of the token, as well as the size of the ecosystem. When I mentioned that it's 49 parachains, and probably more teams when you start counting applications built on top of that parachain. So clearly, there's something going on there. Now, to put that number into perspective, out of those 125 million, currently, 80 million are coming from just 2 parachains, from Hydration and from Moonbeam. Again, putting that name into context with the broader space, we're just 20 basis points, 0.2% of Ethereum's TVL. That's just a drop in the bucket. And then to compare our TVL with other chains, we basically have the same TVL, the same aggregated TVL than Kava chain, which is one Cosmos chain. So definitely a lot to do in this front. How did we get here? As I mentioned, it's easy to just get stuck in the static image of the current TVL numbers. But this is the aggregated TVL of Polkadot throughout its history. So first, obviously starting where the initial parachains launched, you can see that spike. That was back in the day when Polkadot was the hottest girl in town. Everyone was talking about it. We had figured out practically the blockchain trilemma. Everyone wanted to build on Polkadot. Everyone wanted to fund Polkadot projects. And as a result, you can see that spike in TVL. That was the launch of Moonbeam initially. That was the launch of Akala. Then the launch of Hydration, Mangata, although that was in Kusama, Centrifuge. A lot of big names. A lot of that, of course, there still remain in our ecosystem. But then we obviously see this big drop. And that was it. That was a very specific event to Polkadot, which was the Nomad hack. At that point in time, Nomad was the main entryway of liquidity into the Polkadot ecosystem. Initially, it was connected to Moonbeam, and most of the assets that Moonbeam had in its DeFi ecosystem were Nomad assets. So as you can tell, there was a sharp decline on TVL as a result of that. Then we started picking the ecosystem back up very slowly and with a lot of effort. And after just a couple months after that, AUSD, the decentralized stablecoin of Polkadot, built by Akala, one of the top parachains at that time, had a DPEG event. And that sent a rippling effect throughout the whole ecosystem. Again, another drop in TVL. Then follow that by the multi-chain hack, another bridge hack on Moonbeam and on Moonriver. And then we had the depths of the bear market, which of course weren't as specific to the Polkadot ecosystem, but more broadly to the space. And then I put two events there that are kind of the positive things, which is stablecoins going live on Polkadot. Unfortunately, not in the best market timing, but still an important piece of infrastructure to highlight. So what can we learn from our peers? And in this part, I tried to pick different ecosystems so you can kind of get an aggregated view of what they could have done right, not specific to either their architecture or their smart contract language. So I picked Avalanche, which was one of the first layer ones to launch. It was EVM compatible, but of course, outside of Ethereum. I picked Cosmos, which obviously we share a lot of our architecture with, so the Internet of Blockchains, multi-chain ecosystem. And I also picked the other side of the spectrum, which was Solana. They took a completely different route with a monolithic architecture, and we're going to see what they did wrong, right. So let's start with the Avalanche ecosystem. The current TVL of Avalanche is 755 million. So remember, 125 million in Polkadot aggregated versus 755 million. Their market cap is kind of similar to ours. It's 9.9 million, billion. Ours is at 8 billion. Avalanche launched also around the same time, September 2020, and very early after their launch, they had a canonical bridge, which was operated by the Avalanche team. They also had a very popular program, which is very mentioned frequently in the Polkadot ecosystem as we want our Polkadot Avalanche Rush program. They launched it in 2021, and it was 180 million to support DeFi teams in the Avalanche ecosystem with liquidity incentives using the AVAX token, and that was supposed to last for 2 years. So just keep those data points in mind. Then the second one, Solana Ecosystem. Obviously, they're going to have a lot of different numbers than us, but still good to compare ourselves. Solana market cap is currently at 62 billion. Compare us with 8 billion. Current TVL is $4.47 billion. It's I'm going to say it's the second ecosystem with the highest TVL after Ethereum, maybe third after Arbitrum. They launched a little bit earlier than us, March 2020. And even though they didn't have a bridge canonical to the Solana ecosystem, they did have Wormhole, which was built inside Solana and really focused its initial efforts on Solana. So not canonical, but definitely very Solana focused. They also had similar issues, and you could argue even bigger issues than the ones that we had with the Nomad hack and whatever. They had the FTX collapse, and that basically drained the whole ecosystem of liquidity. And I mean, I think it's very publicly known the comeback that they'd had. So they definitely did something wrong. It's not like each misstep that the ecosystem had just kills the liquidity. Solana is a good example of you can have missteps, but as long as you have certain pieces in place, you still have a chance to attract the necessary liquidity for your ecosystem. Cosmos Ecosystem. It's definitely a very good parallel for us, given the architecture, given that it's not one chain that you need to bootstrap, but it's several. Autumn market cap is actually lower than DOT's market cap. There could be a lot of reasons for it, utility, shared security, et cetera, but it's still a data point to get in mind. 2.3 billion compared to 8, so it's basically 25% of DOT's market cap. But the aggregated TVL of Cosmos Ecosystem is almost $2 billion. Most of it is going to be concentrated around 5 chains, but it's still substantially lower than higher than what we have in the Polkadot ecosystem. They did launch with a canonical bridge at the beginning. This was Gravity Bridge, which launched in December 2021. So very early on into the development roadmap of Polkadot. It was a bridge that was initially its own blockchain. Then they connected it to the Cosmos hub, and they turned that into kind of the gateway of liquidity into the Cosmos ecosystem. Axelar later on launched as its standalone Cosmos chain and further improved the connectivity of Cosmos chain into Ethereum. And as well as the FTX, Nomad hack, multi-chain hack, they had the Terra crash, which at that point, Terra was close to 90% of their TVL, which got wiped out in a matter of days. And again, they managed to recover back again to $2 billion in TVL. So what can we conclude out of these things? As I mentioned, all very different architectures, all different ecosystems. They have different technical value props, but they all have more liquidity than us. My conclusion from this is all ecosystems had an intuitive and reliable way and distribution funnel for new users and liquidity into their ecosystem. I think that's a very clear pattern. With Solana, you had Wormhole. With Avalanche, you had the Avalanche Bridge. With Cosmos, you had Gravity Bridge, and you had Axelar supporting those ecosystems. So what is Polkadot and Velocity doing to solve this issue? There's obviously a lot of initiatives in this specific topic of bridges. BridgeUp was part of the Polkadot white paper. It was understood that we needed a connectivity into the Ethereum ecosystem, but in a very Polkadot fashion, we weren't going to compromise our values of decentralization and resilience. So the team, Snowbridge team, has been doing a lot of good work for the ecosystem, and after a long time, they've launched the bridge on Polkadot BridgeUp, and now we're finally connected with a trustless bridge into Ethereum. How are we supporting Snowbridge and the Polkadot ecosystem? The Velocity engineering team has been building the UI for BridgeUp, and our intention is to bring an app that can facilitate transfers in, out, and across the ecosystem from one simple UI. We're launching it this week, and this is a demo of the Turtle app, developed here by my colleagues in the front. Let's see if it goes. It worked just before the presentation. Oh. Sorry about that. Boom. So as you can see, it's very familiar token transfer application. We did want to take a bold approach in its design. We intentionally wanted to kind of have a refreshed look compared to like something that's very like native to Polkadot. And we're, as I mentioned, very focused on having a sleek and simplistic design. So currently, the functionality that we're supporting is basically Snowbridge functionality. So this demo is bridging wrapped ETH from Ethereum into Polkadot Asset Hub. The idea is to continue expanding the functionality, Ethereum directly to any parachain in the Polkadot ecosystem. And subsequently, we also want to support parachain to parachain transfers across Polkadot. So the idea is for the user to completely have what infrastructure they're using abstracted away. They just need to know where they are, where they want to go, and what tokens they want to move. So this transfer currently, I'm not going to go through it, but it takes around like 10 to 15 minutes. It was actually a very cheap one. I think we paid like $2 or $3 in gas fees. The way back to Ethereum is a little bit more expensive. But yeah, we want to invite you guys to try out the application, give us some feedback, some feature requests, submit a bug if you see one. I'm putting here a link for a QR code for the people that want to try it out. So how is this going to help liquidity in the Polkadot ecosystem? Clearly, now we have more of a canonical way and trust minimized way to bring liquidity in. We have to make it as easy and intuitive as possible, and we have to probably give this line to parachains who are currently starving for liquidity. Pair this with a lot of visibility, so it's basically a juncture effort between marketing teams, Polkadot, Parity, Snowbridge, Velocity. There's a lot of incentive programs that have been already in the works, and everything in conjunction, I think, is going to help out the liquidity issue on Polkadot. The second piece that we're working on from Velocity is filling the infrastructure gap. So we're doing this in several ways. We launched the DeFi infrastructure and tooling bounty, which Velocity is operating. And the curators in the bounty are people from Hydration, Akala, Moonbeam, Centrifuge, Nova Wallet, and I'm forgetting one last one. Oh, and Giotto. So we have a broad representation within the ecosystem from parachains that know exactly what is the infrastructure that they need, what is the infrastructure that is missing, and then we as Velocity will putting in commercial and BD efforts to go out, get these teams, and have a very streamlined way of actually getting the people paid in a way that we can actually look at the work that they're doing. The second thing is empowering OpenGov as a tool for liquidity incentives. Hydration was a clear one that kind of blazed the path for it. They submitted a proposal for 1 million DOT for the treasury to actually be NLP into the Omni pool with DOT tokens. And they submitted another proposal for 1 million to create incentives into the Omni pool. Currently, this incentive program is going on. It's increased Hydration's TVL by basically 2x, and there's still more incentives to come. There's also different alternatives to using the treasury as a source of liquidity. Bifrost made a loan for DOT, converted it into VDOT, and put it into the Bifrost DEX, improving the UX of their liquid staking derivative while having the treasury accrue staking rewards directly from the Bifrost liquid staking token. The third piece, is infrastructure BD in partnerships with the Web3 Foundation. A lot of these infrastructure providers, unfortunately, have big ticket sizes and can directly go to the treasury, at least in the current form of the bounty. The Web3 Foundation has been a great partner for us. They are really leaning into the ecosystem and trying to help fill this infrastructure gap. And then the last piece is being orchestrators of institutional liquidity providers into the ecosystem. There's a lot of people that are interested in putting their money where their mouth is and actually putting liquidity into Polkadot, but a lot of them need guidance. They need to understand where the opportunities are, and we also need to hear to understand what are the infrastructure pieces that they're missing for them to be able to interact with parachains directly. So as you can see, Velocity is taking a very holistic approach, both building products, creating partnerships, using OpenGov as a tool to open the floodgates of the ecosystem for liquidity to come into Polkadot. That's the talk. Thank you very much for listening. Open to any questions.
Any question? Comments? No comments?
All clear. No.
For the streaming.
Thanks. You didn't mention Interlay, which is, I think, a pretty integral part of IBTC and Bitcoin as a collateral and also TVL on Polkadot. Do you have any comments regarding Interlay, and do you have any plans for promoting Interlay, which is kind of stale at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. So the Interlay part is part of the fourth point that I mentioned with orchestrating liquidity. Currently, the issue with Interlay is that all the capacity to mint BTC is completely capped out, right? Given the mechanism that Interlay uses, which is an over-collateralized bridge system, you need close to 250% compared to the IBTC that's coming out. So it's really capital inefficient. We're utilizing Treasury, we're utilizing Web3 Foundation resources to actually expand that capacity and let the IBTC flow into the ecosystem. So It is a still project in the sense that the founding team is currently putting their focus elsewhere, but we do understand that it's a foundational piece of DeFi in Polkadot, and a lot of community members, including Velocity, including Rogue, including other stakeholders, are coming together to form a plan on how we can continue developing Interlay into maybe more of a public good type of chain, and obviously leverage BTC liquidity into Polkadot.